Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you, glad you could join us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the movies. Um, I'd like to kick off our Q&A tonight by acknowledging the traditional owners of the country that I'm on at the moment. I'm on Wurundjeri country here in Naarm, in so-called Victoria, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also I would like to pay my respects to my elders who've joined me, guided me in my journey through my life. My name's James Williams. I'm Waka Waka and Woolly Woolly. My traditional country begins on the outskirts of northwestern outskirts of a place known as Meanjin. I tend to call places by their traditional names these days, not so much the white fellas' names. So Meanjin in so-called Queensland, and I call it Murrayland. So I've just got Jon with us tonight. So thanks for joining us, Jon. Maybe you might be able to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you as well.
There you go, man. I'm from a place called Casino in northern New South Wales. Sort of grew up here in western New South Wales. My father's a Wiradjuri fellow from Peak Hill and Wellington, and my mum's Bunjalung and Yagle from Casino and Yamba, and sort of grew up mostly in the bush, but a little bit in the city. Um, Been in the film game for about 20 years. I mean, I've probably been making shorts professionally, I guess, for 20 years, but, always been into stories and horror and sci-fi films as a kid. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's pretty deadly. Hey, the horror and the sci-fi. I reckon
Yeah,
that's another dimension. It really makes movies interesting.
yeah, they're the kind of stories that, I don't know, there's a lot of blackfellas who are into those sorts of things too. Like, that's the flavour, I think.
Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of blackfellas into that sort of stuff. So it's really good to see. And I saw the comments on the chat there. A lot of people really actually were, I think, a few of them said that they were mind blown, that it was pretty amazing to watch both of those movies, because I think they got like a bit of a taste of something that, you know, they never really knew existed. So I think they really enjoyed it for that reason.
Yeah, those are the kinds of stories that I reckon we all grow up with, like, um, parents and older people probably, throw those stories at us to try and correct our behaviour or to do, you know, don't go over there or that sort of behaviour. But um, even, when you got older cousins or brothers or sisters or something, they're like, oh, I bet you won't go over there and to that
Yeah,
place that they told us not to go to. Just go over there, touch that tree and come back. Like
yeah,
just those little dares and stuff. Um, so it's sort of, I don't know, the supernatural, it's kind of thrilling, a little bit thrilling, but I think it's very natural for us as storytellers to sort of be in
yeah.
touch with the supernatural.
It is. I remember growing up being told about the Gadachi man, with
Mm.
my country, and it kind of scared me as well. So I can relate to it. And like even my ancestors were the Gadachi men with my mob as well. So that was pretty interesting to learn about all that stuff as I was growing up. And yes, I find it really, really intriguing. Um, so I've actually got a few questions I can ask. Well, it's for Curtis and Jon, but I've only got Jon with us tonight. So
Yeah, no worries.
just ask you about your film. It depicts a supernatural presence. Was it a useful tool to explore in your stories, the supernatural?
Oh, absolutely, man. Like sometimes because it's about the stolen generation and sort of, sometimes postnatal depression that can affect young mothers and just where or women generally, just the fear that we have as a people that the government still will try and take our kids, and
Yeah,
no matter how high or how much money we got in the bank or where what our living circumstances, that's still a fear in the back of our heads, all of our heads, and um, to have that irrational what seems like an irrational fear following you around, other people might think it's irrational, but it's totally sort of an ingrained kind of thing that's come through and we've been raised with. But it is a horror story. I mean, like, the history of invasion is a horror story, but in this case, the history of the stolen generation, it really is a horror story. Like any story where children are just ripped from their parents and never seen again, that's a horror
Yeah.
story. Um, so that genre, like the supernatural, if we tell that story in a drama, then people turn off because they might think, oh, it's a bit too much hard going. But if we tell it in a horror film, then people feel it because you watch drama, but you feel horror. So then people can feel the truth of what's happened to us.
Yeah, actually, when I didn't think about it that way, that's really good. That actually kind of moves it or changes it into a position where people can just watch it as a story
Mm.
and be a bit removed from the horrendous stuff that actually happened. I've told in the last like week or so, I've told a number of people that my family were pretty lucky. We dodged a
Mm.
bullet, but
Mm.
I've got friends and Uncle Choco down here, and Pete and Stu, you got people I work with. They're all part of the stolen generation, so I'm surrounded by it, and it continues these days today as well.
Mm.
So I don't think it's not over.
No, that's
And
right. Yeah, same. Like we sort of, we kind of had we had stories in our family like even while people were moving around to try and stay one step ahead of
yeah,
those the black car, and then that gets people get labeled as like shifty, or oh, they just disappear, they went on walkabout or whatever. But there was a reason that they moved because they're staying away from whatever. But yeah,
trying,
same
yeah, they're
same.
trying to keep one step ahead of the
Yeah.
authority. And it was really a true horror story for a lot of mob hay, back in those days. Where, I mean, they're still being taken today, but
Mm.
it's from a different perspective. Those days, it was about the simulation and taking like what they call the half castes away from, their full blood family where they get their culture, which is horrendous. Like I grew up where I was kind of almost removed from my culture as well, but I'm so lucky that I've been able to go back to country and get a lot of it again. So I can only imagine what it's like, you know, being a stolen generation.
Yeah,
It's
I'm the same, man. It was sort of like it feels like people, like, since the apology, um people aren't as like the stolen generation. Australia seems to think it's dealt with it or something. But
yeah,
your heart still bleeds for them fellas. Like you just want to hug them and say, you know, wow, you still, it's all good, but you can't feel what them fellas are missing. But it's just sort of like, but no, your heart just bleeds for them, and you just want to still say, we're all one mob, and you still
yeah,
belong because they might feel like they haven't got that belonging.
yeah. And I'm exactly the same this time every year. Like I reach out and make sure that the stolen mob that I know personally are supported by me because it must be horrendous for them. I had another question here to ask you, John,
Yeah.
but I think you've already answered this one. It was talking about telling the story through the horror genre, so that's
Oh,
okay. I think you addressed that one before. So there's another really good question here about the correlation to the word Moogai. Are parents and elders interlinked? Can you answer that one? Because
um, I mean, for like Bunjalung word, like Moogai, the word means like spirit, like, it could be good or bad, but just spirit. But we often use it like, oh, there's a Moogai over there, there's a boogeyman over there, so don't go there. Um, but I mean, there's no elders. It's not about elders in the film. Um, it's sort of just about the bad spirit, the bad uh, thing. But I did see that one website had said that that another mob, I think, might use the same word to mean elder. But
Yes.
for us, it didn't mean that. It just meant like a spirit. Yeah. So it wasn't. The film wasn't really about elders as such.
Okay, well, that's interesting to know. Yeah, I think all of us different mobs had different names. You know, like I've learnt stories from my father about it seems like the Moogai that we had, you know, like, and he'd be out on country, out in the bush, and you know, he'd be waken up by this min light that would
Mm.
be tracking him out in outback Queensland. So yeah, I grew up with those stories as well. It sounds like a similar story to what you're saying. Our mob had our own version of this spirit that, you know, kind of was almost caused a bit of trouble and
Yeah, and
and
just something that
okay,
might.
go
Oh,
on.
just something that follows you around too. Like in the film, you know, they really can't get away from it. Uh, like like that is the stolen generation stuff, but it's also and the postnatal depression stuff, but it's also just a lot of our stories seem to have, you know, doesn't matter where this person went, this thing still followed. Like
Yeah,
just that
exactly.
that the supernatural, because it can't always be understood. You know, as much as you try to put your moves on it, I don't know, it just still stays in the.
It's still a bit of a mystery,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
it's still a mystery. Yeah,
Yeah, you don't know where it comes from and what it actually means.
yeah.
It's really, really interesting. I've actually gone back to the live chat here now, and it's
Oh, yeah.
some of the comments from the people who've been watching the movies. You know, they're like, it's a horror story, and congratulations for making the film. And Sophie says it's brilliant, and Michael Milston says, how important is fear in the development of community? So I think that's an interesting question. Do you have something you can say about that,
Oh,
Jon?
I mean, the ways in which I think, you know, any community, the way that they kind of put their fears into story, like,
Mm.
you know, even with the horror genre, like, you know, zombies are all the rage now because, you know, it feels like the world's gone crazy. So
Yeah.
there's all these apocalypse stories, like you know, the way that any community sort of um, kind of personalizes the boogeyman. Um, it's all about, you know, what has happened to them in the past and how they try and tell the next generation don't make these mistakes. And for us, you know, it's not just the Moogai. It's like the film The Moogai. It's not just about stolen generation. It's about invasion and a whole bunch of things. You know, like you know, we never let ourselves get put in that position again where we're so vulnerable to, you know, all the stuff that was kind of perpetrated on us.
Yeah, I often say that the reason why that invasion was so successful is the type of people that we are. We're very welcoming and you know would always invite people onto our country
Mm.
and care for them, and that's probably was probably part of our downfall why the invasion was so successful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and just
and
even the nature of our borders, like it's not like it might be a river, but it also might be. I think sometimes, you know, like it's not like there's a okay, here's a fence, and on that
yeah,
side is you, and on that side is me. That's my place over there. That's your place over there, and in between is like this, not no man's land, but it's like this
I was
merging.
going to say no man's land, but not no.
Yeah, yeah, like a merging of the things. So there's no where is the where is the actual fence line? No, there's no
The line
fence line.
of the border. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
none.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's not separate. It's together.
yeah, it is together. And that's what a lot of our mob did historically. You know, we might have had our own countries, but there was that grey area where we crossed over
Yeah,
as well. I might go back to a few other questions we've got here in the live
yeah,
chat. Interesting recent one.
yep.
Actually, Michael had a comment after the apology covering the facts that stealing is increasing apace. And Margie says many Australians and even their government is not yet open to the Uluru Statement of the Heart. and I agree there's a long way for the full truth to be told. And I mean, comment I'd make about that is, like I personally think that, talking about voice treaty truth needs to be the other way around. Truth treaty voice, so that there's truth telling, people actually, I call them my fellow Australians, because they're not going anywhere. They're all born in this country. They need to, the truth has never really been well told. So I'd really rather that people, learn the truth first and then, talk about treaties and a voice to the Parliament. Got another question from Michael here. It's Mamu seemed to be a good spirit. Is that correct?
I haven't seen the film.
Sorry?
I haven't seen the film. That's in the other film, eh?
Oh, that's right. That's in the other film. Yep, sorry. I would have directed that question to Curtis. Sorry about that. I was just reading the question, and I actually didn't get a chance to see that one. I just I saw the trailer on it, and I must watch the whole thing. This is really important too. Svetlana says, thank you for highlighting postnatal depression. I saw many teenage mothers go through this. And Frank, any plans for making a feature of the Moogai? I reckon Fanforce should commission you to do it. That sounds good.
Yeah, well, the writing process, as I was writing the short, I was going back and forwards. Like, it started out. I started out with a bigger story, and then we wanted to make the short almost as like a proof of concept film for investors, and then we sort of got some traction at festivals, and it's got a life of its own. But I was writing the short film and the feature film sort of at the same time. So sometimes some of the elements from the feature made their way back into the short. Like the little girl character, she wasn't in the short originally, but I kind of discovered her in the feature film, and brought her back into that character came back into the short. So it sort of enriched it all a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so the plans are definitely afoot for the feature.
Oh, that's excellent. Good news. I'd like to see that myself personally, actually. And I'm just looking through.
That little girl in the film, that's my granddaughter.
Oh, true.
Precious, come here. She's here. I got them all here, but I got a bunch of grandkids, but they've all had to be quiet because we're doing this Zoom. But she's here now.
Here she is. Hello, Bob. You're deadly.
They're gone. Yeah, she's so. But
awesome.
but no, it was good. All them kids at the end, that was all like grandkids, nephews, and nieces.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Real family affair.
Yeah, that's great. Family affair.
And we didn't have to pay them. We just paid them in ice cream. Yeah.
Oh, actually, I don't know if I should even say this, but talking to a filmmaker, there's actually a film I'd really like to make. And no, I'm going to track a little bit, but I actually played because I'm an actor, so I've done a lot of stage work and film and TV work. I played a role of, and you're probably aware of this fella, Len Waters, who was the only Aboriginal fighter pilot in World War II.
Yep.
Yeah. And I really didn't know the story at all much before that.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, geez, playing that character, it really got to me and I thought, sorry for going off track, everyone, but really, really amazing story about the only Aboriginal fighter pilot who flew planes in World War II for the Australian Armed Forces. And he was extremely successful. But then when he came home from the war, he got treated just like a blackfellow again as soon as he took that uniform off. And I should ask if you might want to help me. Seriously, I wanted to see if I could get someone to, and I'd love to play the old Len Waters and have a young up and coming Aboriginal actor play Len flying Spitfires. I'm a bit of a Draft nut. That's why I think I'm passionate about this story.
No, I know the story, and
Oh,
yeah, one of the lads that I work with a fair bit has wanted to tell that story too. Like it's a great story. Um, uh, look, man, you know, I think it's a story that needs to be told. At a certain point, we'll get we'll get to where all these untold stories, like um,
and
all these untold stories will come out, and
come out.
I think people will just be blown away, like by you know just so many people just sitting back going, I had no idea this person lived. I had no idea this person thing. So look, I think
I guess that's where I was going off track a little bit. That's where I was getting with that.
mm,
All these stories that are out there, and I vaguely knew about Len Waters, but I didn't know anything at all until I had to learn the script. I had to play my part.
yep.
And I got into his character and I thought, this story needs to be told. And you're right, there's so many other stories that need to be told. And I hope you continue on with your good work, John, with telling these stories.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like it's all it's also like I don't know. Sometimes you think we don't have to actually make up stories because there's this black fella out there somewhere that's lived some crazy life that we'll go, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, this fella was doing it. He was out there.
There's heaps of amazing stories. I mean,
Yeah.
I could even do a film about my mum and dad, their life in outback Queensland, what they did. That's an interesting story in itself. And that's
Yep.
incredible, what they did. Um, so, yeah, sorry again for going off track, but that's where I was going with that, is just to talk about, let's hope we see a lot more of those stories. And I know that, all the mob that are online there now making a few comments.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, I reckon they'd enjoy them as well. I think they're really, I know for a fact that, the wider Australian community are hungering to hear our stories now.
Mm.
And, they just want to hear our stories. And I'd say probably 20, 30 years ago, they probably weren't even interested. But I've seen it so much everywhere, how our wider Australian, our fellow Australians want to hear these stories. So, yeah, I think I'd look back to the chat. So Svetlana's made another comment about the supernatural dimension featured in these films are important in our understanding of First Nations experience. It harkens to our cultural dis-ease with mental unrest. Yes, that's very good to watch, isn't it? And Sabine has actually put in another really good comment about also important to watch Utopia, Our Generation doco. So yeah, if you haven't seen Utopia, I'd suggest you have a look at that movie as well. It's a
Right.
really good story. I've seen that one. Um, and also Google Len Waters. He was just an
Mm.
incredible man, and like I could just see that so much that going back to taking off that uniform, he just went back to being a black fellow who wasn't allowed into a bar, and his traditional country was given away to return soldiers. That sort of story. It was
Mm.
just bizarre how that stuff happened,
Oh,
but it did.
oh, it doesn't matter, and it's sort of it's sometimes it can be weird, like because the Moogai we won a festival in the US, and
Ah,
uh, they really sort of got into the themes, and they really got into the filmmaking, and they they had no problem opening up to the film because it was about us, and they didn't have a dog in the fight.
yeah,
And I think sometimes when if it was because the Native American people have had a similar experience to us with the Stolen
mm,
Generation stuff, and maybe if it was a story about that, about their experience, maybe it might have been easier for Australia to sort of see it. It's like you can see it when it's someone else, but not when it's you, or something. Like
yeah,
I don't know. There's something about the way these stories. Oh, just how much you can, how much anybody can see themselves when they look in the mirror. But if you're looking through a window, then you can see yourself. But if you're looking in a mirror, it's a bit harder or something. Oh, I don't know. Probably not
yeah.
make.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah, it's a bit hard to describe. describe it, but I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
thought, well, winning that festival in the US, we were just sort of blown away, you know, like, oh, what? Uh, and just the way they perceive the film versus the way Australians were perceiving the film, you know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because Australians have grown up with what they've learned about First Nations people, their
Yeah,
whole life,
and
whereas the Americans might not have a clue or whatever. So they're open to seeing the story and really absorbing it and seeing it from a different perspective, right? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yep, that's what I meant. Yeah,
No worries. I was glad I was able to. I was trying to think how I could try and
yeah, that's it.
say that. Yeah. Well, and it's so true. Well, it's really good that you've been able to join us and have a bit of a yarn. I think it's about time for us to say goodbye, and I think that everyone who's saw the films tonight, the two short films, have thoroughly enjoyed them. And there's still some really good comments coming through from the live chat. Yeah, Claire says, "Agreed, John. Confronting ourselves is much harder." Yeah, that's very true, Claire. Thank you for that. So anyway, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and thank you, John, and have a lovely weekend, everyone, and make sure you tune into FanForce TV again at some other stage as well. Okay, so thanks and bye for now.